Thank you, Brad. That was very kind. And thank you to Mohawk Consultations for welcoming this idea of holding a conference on connectivity, and to the board for really helping make it happen, especially Sandra Smiley, Marty Irwin, and Chris Bernabo for your support, and Jesse Bruschini, who really made things happen this last month. And again, our gratitude to the sponsors of today's conference. But I want to thank you all for coming today. We are thrilled with the turnout and the interest in today's conference. I think we can all agree that achieving connectivity really requires partnership. Whatever the scale of the connectivity project, we really need to be working with others. And we hope today, as Brad said, sparks new connections amongst different practitioners. And based on the diversity of practitioners that are listed in the registration, I think the potential in this room is really promising. Just by show of hands, how many of you represent municipal boards, committees, and commissions, like planning boards, elected officials? All right, that's great. How many are from land trusts? You know, there's a lot of land trusts represented. That's wonderful. How about state and county agencies? Outstanding, that's great. Conservation nonprofit organizations? Excellent. Consultants and professional planners and landscape architects. I saw there were a few on the list. Wonderful. And how about interested citizens and landowners? Great. Great. We need to talk to you too. And finally, how about students, grad students, college students, high school students? I know there's more than Andrew. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. I'm sure I've left someone out, but I just want to say I think it's wonderful that we have such a diverse crowd, and I appreciate you all being here today. And after lunch, as an aside, I'm going to ask you to change to a different table because I know there's a tendency to sit with our colleagues, and I'd love to give everybody a chance to meet with people outside our normal practitioner group. And perhaps you've already organically ended up there, so that's great, and don't move if that's the case. So why a conference on connectivity? Why nature across boundaries? When we're here at the Mountain House and we drove up the beautiful access road through the Chestnut Oak and Hemlock Forest, it's probably evident there's a huge landscape of forest here. What's the problem? And the connected landscape of the Shawangunk Ridge does have over, 40,000 acres protected thanks to efforts by the Smiley family, Mohawk Preserve, the Nature Conservancy, and New York State Parks. And it's certainly an outstanding example of partnerships that are helping to protect and steward a large landscape. And we're fortunate that there are actually many examples. Let's go back to the Catskills example. There we go. There are many examples of large conserved landscapes in the Hudson Valley, such as the Catskill Mountains, where there's hundreds of thousands of acres of forest preserve. And the Hudson Highlands that span east and west of the Hudson River with incredible views like this of unbroken forest. This is right outside the city of Beacon from the fire tower. And while these are all recognizable, prominent, high elevation forested areas in the mid-Hudson, there may be other larger unfragmented areas that you might be less familiar with. So I wanted to just take a moment to point these out. So such as up north, the Albany pine bush. It's a globally rare ecosystem located right in the heart of the Capital District with 3,200 acres protected as nature preserve, largely in part for the federally endangered cardinal blue butterfly. And not far from here in Ulster County, there are the Shawangunk Grasslands National Wildlife Refuge, which protects almost 600 acres of grassland-dependent migratory bird habitat, as well as habitat for wintering raptors. And then further north, on the east side of the river in Rensselaer County, the Rensselaer Plateau, which has gained a lot of recognition and conservation success in large part thanks to the volunteer-driven Rensselaer Plateau Alliance, which formed 11 years ago, and now aims to conserve 18,000 acres of forest and habitat by the year 2018. Impressive. And you might not be as familiar with some of our aquatic unfragmented areas, such as the Bashakill Marsh in Sullivan and Orange County. The Bashakill is one of the largest freshwater wetlands in southeastern New York, with over 3,000 acres included in a DEC wildlife management area. And also the Great Swamp is a huge wetland in Dutchess and Putnam counties, and it's one of the largest freshwater wetlands in New York State, over 6,000 acres in size. So these large areas all appear in the New York State Open Space Plan. Many are recognized as Audubon important bird areas, and they're each highlighted in detail in the Hudson River Estuary Wildlife and Habitat Conservation Framework, which was published in 2006 by the Hudson River Estuary Program and Cornell University. The significant biodiversity areas that are identified on this map that's in the framework contain high concentrations of biodiversity. They have unusual ecological significance, but they also tend to contain features that are important for connectivity, like large forests and wetland complexes. And so just to orient you to the map and some of the features I just showed you, here's New York City at the southern end of the tidal portion of the river, the estuary, which flows all the way up to the dam in Troy. And so here we have Rensselaer Plateau, here are the Catskill Mountains, here we are on the Shawangunk Ridge, and here are the Hudson Highlands, and there's many other smaller places that are described in this document. Now, this framework gave us kind of a tool to think about conservation of these important significant biodiversity areas. Because despite of the great work that's been done by state agencies and conservation partners, a lot of the lands within these areas is still unprotected. But the map and this visual also kind of gives us a reminder that many of these large areas exist in isolation. So what's going on in the spaces between them? What's going on with the forests that are adjacent to these large protected or large significant areas? What about the stream corridors that are threading the entire Hudson Valley, or the complexes of smaller habitats that are in the lowlands? Many of these significant biodiversity areas exist somewhat as islands in a landscape that has many decision makers that are affecting land use. So I wanted to describe the decision-making landscape. So this map has the same view of the Hudson River corridor with the 10 counties along the tidal portion of the river. But now we have the municipal boundaries overlaid, the 10 counties and the 260 municipalities, towns, cities, and villages, each with their own land use decision-making authority. Communities in the Hudson Valley range from shoreline cities with active waterfronts or industrial shorelines to valleys with active farmland, or farmlands that are converted to subdivisions and more suburbs, to towns with vast protected forests. And the size and capacity of each of these communities is equally variable. This map is from a population trends analysis that was done by Patterns for Progress in 2013. The areas of red indicate high population, and the areas of green are lower population. This is only showing the mid and lower Hudson Valley along with Sullivan County. But we have communities ranging from like Yonkers, which is the darkest red, which has about 200,000 residents, to more rural communities that have like 200 residents, like Hardenberg in the Catskills. And the capacity of these communities is equally variable as their populations. We have some communities with paid GIS staff, with paid planners, and some that only have planners that are maybe available as a needed basis. So besides the likelihood that all these communities have different goals and needs, finding opportunities to work collaboratively and plan for the big picture can be difficult, if not impossible, if these communities are not receiving some kind of assistance. So I'm excited at the prospect of kind of exploring how we can all be providing better assistance to think more big picture at the local level today. In addition, to complicate this decision-making landscape even more, 80% of the Hudson Valley is in private land ownership. So i.e., there are many boundaries to cross when planning for nature in the Hudson Valley between all these municipal boundaries and all the local private land ownership. And why does it all matter? Why does connectivity matter? I think you're going to hear a whole array of reasons why today from our different speakers. I'm going to focus on just a few. But for starters, this kind of fragmentation of the landscape is a significant threat to biodiversity in the Hudson Valley. And this has been called out in numerous documents. The New York State Wildlife Action Plan states clearly that maintaining or restoring connectivity is important for species of greatest conservation need throughout New York State for a variety of habitats. And similarly, in a vulnerability assessment of at-risk species in New York State and how they're going to respond to climate change, our upcoming presenter, Matt Schlesinger, and his co-authors made the point that aquatic and terrestrial habitat connectivity must be maintained and restored in order to help species adapt to the changing climate. And we'll hear more about that from Matt shortly. So why does it matter? The other reason I want to point out is that, so let's see, something's not working, right? Oh, there we go. Poorly planned development is the major factor for this fragmented pattern that we're seeing in the landscape. And that's something we have the power to change. And we're going to be hearing more about that today as well from our speakers, in particular, particularly from Heidi Kretzer and Bob Wills. So I will just point out a couple of quotes that I like about this particular topic. From Jane Daly and Michael Clemens in Nature and Fragments, a new paradigm is needed, one that advances the proposition that instead of developing land with the naive expectation that ecosystems will magically rearrange themselves around a new development, a community should first understand its ecosystems and then place development where it will minimize ecological impact. And by doing so, it will bring biodiversity conservation fully into the smart growth equation, creating quality communities that sustain both humans and the ecosystems upon which all life depends. I thought that was well said. And of course, there's always work to be done on local codes. I'll let you read that. How many can relate to that? So finally, why does it matter? Connectivity contributes to climate change, adaptation, and resiliency. Larger forests, intact stream corridors that are connected to their floodplains, large wetland complexes. Not only are these important for wildlife that need to move about the landscape now, but they're also important for wildlife and ecological communities that will need to shift their ranges due to a changing climate. But they also help communities remain resilient in the face of increased precipitation, drought, major storm events that are all expected due to our changing climate. So today's conference will showcase projects that are approaching connectivity at different scales and through different approaches, so that hopefully something will resonate with each one of you and help you think of ideas that might inform your own work. I particularly like this multi-pronged approach of the Staying Connected initiative, which focuses on forest connectivity in the Appalachians from the US into Canada. And they have this kind of six-pronged approach. And so today's presentations are really going to be focusing on those first four bullets. So I just wanted to take a moment to remind you that in April 2018, Mohawk Consultations will host a forum that's a follow-up to today. So if there's things you hear about today you want to know more about, or there's things you didn't hear today that you'd like to learn more about, such as transportation mitigation, or perhaps you'd like to hear more case studies from the Hudson Valley, like the great work that's being done from Black Rock Forest, Scunamunk Mountain in Orange County, or you want to hear ideas about how you can work across municipal boundaries to protect source water. Write that down on the yellow evaluation and make sure you turn those in at the end of the day so we can make sure the forum is valuable to you and builds on what we've started today. So before I go on, I just wanted to give you a couple of examples of ways that the Hudson River Estuary Program where I work, how we are working with communities to address connectivity. I am especially inspired by communities in the Hudson Valley and the amount of time and energy that communities are putting in to think about this important issue of connectivity, and I hope you'll see that this work can take many different forms. For example, communities are paying attention to aquatic connectivity. With assistance from the Hudson River Estuary Program and the DEC, many volunteers in communities are inventorying how their streams move through culverts and move under bridges, and they understand that this scenario on the left is not only creating vulnerability during intense storm events, it's also not good habitat for the fish and wildlife that need to move up and down the stream or side to side in the stream channel, like this golden retriever, for example. But for real, you can learn more about aquatic connectivity in a poster presentation in the lobby by Shay Weldon and colleagues at the Estuary Program. So please take time to see that poster and all the other displays in the lobby during the breaks today. Oh, there we go. Come on. There we go. In addition, landowners and municipalities are teaming up with the DEC and the Estuary Program to plant streamside trees and shrubs through the Trees for Trips program. This is helping improve water quality, but it's also expanding habitat along streams, which are a natural corridor for wildlife movement. And there are many people who've probably never heard of or given much thought to connectivity. but through citizen science projects that engage volunteers with observing migrations of American eel in Hudson River tributaries, migrations of amphibians during their vernal pool journeys. We're helping educate citizens on the barriers that disconnect migratory habitat, whether they be dams or culverts and streams or roads and developments for the vernal pool breeding amphibians that are moving from forests to wetlands. And hopefully, by doing these by providing these educational opportunities and citizen science opportunities, I'm hoping we're building a constituency that will care about connectivity and support related conservation initiatives in the future. So my colleague Ingrid Haeckel and I have been focusing a lot of effort for the last few years in providing guidance and technical assistance to communities to develop natural resource inventories, or NRIs. And that kind of addresses that quote I said earlier from Nature in Fragments about the need to really know where local ecosystems are. The process of mapping resources in a large area, whether it's a town or a watershed, it gets people thinking about the bigger picture than the usual focus that planning and zoning reviews have of an individual parcel or two. And it provides a springboard for larger scale planning. And we've actually seen this happening already. For example, an ongoing project in the town of Blooming Grove, the town of Cornwall, and the village of Cornwall, rather. Those three municipalities have teamed up on a joint natural resource inventory that's enabled them to see resources that span their shared border. And they were just awarded an estuary grant to work with the Hudson Highlands Land Trust and the Orange County Land Trust to turn that natural resource inventory into an open space index where they'll start actually looking at priorities. And I think this model of municipalities working with local land trusts is a really great way to align priorities related to conservation, in particular connectivity as well. Similarly, the towns of Warsing and Rochester are about to complete a joint open space planning process that was funded also through an estuary grant. The process has brought together representatives from both towns, and they've identified conservation priorities such as this very large and beautiful wetland complex in the town of Warsing, also not too far from here. And the project has helped to support long-standing local interest to maintain connectivity between the Gunks and the Catskill Mountains. The Cooperative Town Open Space Planning process held a meeting to bring together diverse stakeholders that care and wanted to talk about this important landscape connection. And finally, when the town of Red Hook updated its community preservation plan to outline how its community preservation fund would be spent, it incorporated the results of a Cornell connectivity model and the results of a stakeholder process that involved the town of Red Hook, the village of Red Hook, and the village of Tivoli. To my knowledge, this might be the first time a Hudson Valley community has addressed connectivity explicitly through its conservation and financing. And there's a short summary on that project in the newsletter that you were all given with the handouts. So I hope this introduction has served as an appetizer on connectivity to kind of start the day and to give you an overview of the beautiful and very complex landscape that we're all focusing on, that we all hold close to our hearts, as well as many of the different roles that we can keep that each play in keeping this landscape connected. I think the bottom line is land is expensive, the decision-making landscape is very complicated and challenging, and there are a lot of property and political boundaries crisscrossing the valley. Plus, land use planning at the local level is just hard. I can speak from experience and speak from experience of working with many towns. It's a really challenging process. And nonetheless, despite all these challenges, I just shared many examples of how communities are rising to this challenge and they're taking action. And despite all these obstacles, there are more connectivity initiatives happening in the Hudson Valley than we had room to include in today's agenda. And I'm sorry for those of you who are not included, but it's really promising. There are also more connectivity mapping tools and approaches that we could fit in today's conference. So I think that's all really promising. What we did fit into the agenda hopefully demonstrates the wide range of scales and approaches to thinking about and planning for connectivity. We have an all-star lineup of presenters. I'm so grateful to all of you for being here. And we also have roundtable discussions this afternoon and lots of breaks to give you a chance to network with each other and think more broadly about how to partner and how to advance connectivity. So we really hope, as Brad said, that today strengthens your ongoing work as well as sparks new ideas. So I just want to say thank you again for being here. I look forward to spending the day with you. And so thank you. We are pleased and honored to have Ulster County Executive Mike Hine join us to talk about the value of connectivity and importance of connectivity to Ulster County. At governing at the county level, you're certainly thinking about connectivity about many different things, whether it's transportation, water infrastructure, communications, and as an Ulster County resident, I benefit from being able to take the Ulster County bus, sometimes to work and biking home on the Walkill Valley Rail Trail. But today we're going to be focusing specifically on nature-based connectivity, and Executive Hine has really been a leader in advancing conservation and environmental initiatives in the county. So please join me in welcoming him.
How's everybody doing this morning? One of the really cool parts about discussing environmental issues is being able to come to Mohonk and do it. It's probably not a bad place to be able to really understand and appreciate the value of what Mother Nature brings to each and every one of us. Now, I want to tell you a brief story. I grew up in Esopus. I grew up on a farm on Floyd Ackert Road. And I spent an enormous amount of time in the woods. The problem was, I was pretty naive. I thought everybody else did too. I did. We had beautiful properties that we were all adjacent to. Everything was interconnected. It was the same woods, by the way, that John Burroughs walked. I would walk to Black Creek, walk up and down Floyd Ackert Road, and walk deep into the woods for solitude. And the idea of connectivity for animals and for our forests seemed completely natural, and in many ways, I couldn't think of another way that it would be. So then the question came to, what's really happened? Well, I think we've gotten smarter, hopefully at the town levels, in our local planning and zoning, with appreciation for why this is important. We recognize the challenges. We recognize them at the county level too. Ulster County wasn't always the most environmentally friendly place in the entire world. In fact, for generations, it was just the opposite. I think if you look directly, you would be behind me here, wouldn't it be at Mohonk? This entire mountain was clear-cut, as was many other parts of this beautiful county not so long ago. The idea that we come together and appreciate the value of connectivity for our forests seems to be like we have to be careful about this, that we are not in an echo chamber. Is there anybody here that doesn't think that's important? That's what I thought. But there is a reality now. In our country, science has become secondary. There is a deep and fundamental concern that issues of fact that we all see, whether it be climate change or whether it be issues that we are talking about today when it comes to development, that they really don't matter. Well, I come at it from a very different perspective. I think each and every one of you are fighting for the future. And I can't think of a more noble pursuit to be in. Fighting for the future. Because more than a county executive, I'm a dad. I'm deeply concerned about what kind of world we're going to hand off to the next generation and the generation after that. I also believe that we have an obligation to make sure that they are an informed generation, that they understand what's at risk for them and for our planet. And so, when I think about what we have done at the county level, I'm proud to be able to say that 100% of our energy comes from renewable resources. I'm thrilled to be able to say we're the only net carbon neutral county in the state of New York. It's a wonderful leadership position. But the truth is we shouldn't be the only. There's an opportunity all across the land to make smart decisions, to be thoughtful about land use, to think deeply about our environment and climate change, and irrespective of what comes out on the federal level, we can take steps locally that can matter. And so when we get together, we are in the echo chamber. So by the way, if you haven't noticed it, that's where we're at right now. But that's a good thing, because we need to remind each other that our work matters, that efforts that we make to impact our environment in a positive way matter, and that we can do something about it locally. I remember when Amanda Laval, who is an amazing individual, if you don't know her, she really is the environmental director here in Ulster County. She is extraordinary and a wonderful resource for each and every one of us. When we got together and started discussing the idea of what it would be like to have more alternative fuel vehicles, and all the technical people said to me, it can't be done. It can't really be done because you know what? Until they build out a better network, there just aren't enough places to be able to plug in, so it won't work. Chatting with Amanda, chatting with our people, we took a very different perspective. We said, what would happen, by the way, since we are the they, if we built out the network? Our county's the size of Rhode Island. The county had properties. We built out our own charging network, and we didn't wait for anybody else. And as a result, we have greatly been able to expand that portion of our fleet that are EV. There's an opportunity to do something in our own backyards that make a difference. And so when we talk about connectivity, the importance of making sure that we really remain at the tip of the spear when it comes fighting for environmental justice, when it comes to fighting for connectivity, when it comes to just simply doing the right thing and being on the right side of history. I thank you for coming together. I thank you for reminding each other that your work matters. And to think that little old Ulster County was recognized because of Karen in National Geographic for our environmental work and for all of the work that is out there in this room. Because that's how I feel about this. That was an acknowledgement of work that's taking place across this room and with all the people of Ulster County. And I will leave you with this. The town of Ulster had a big landfill. It was a huge landfill. And it was just sitting there covered and dormant. In the not too distant future, and by that I mean within the next 3 months, we will have an industrial scale solar operation on top of that landfill and produce ourselves, not only being 100% of our electricity will come from renewable resources, we're going to produce 20% of our own electricity right here at the county level. There's opportunities to do something extraordinary each and every day. Your work matters, and I came here simply to be able to say thank you, and God bless each and every one.